My name's Cherry and I'm from Oxford in England, and this is my presentation. So my question is, how does beekeeping manifest in Palestine? I'd like to start by saying I'm not an expert, so please correct me and ask questions, but in a polite way, and I'm not trying to persuade anyone of an agenda. My presentation is comprised of three main questions. How has beekeeping been culturally integrated in Palestine? How involved are women in apiary projects, and what socio-economic factors affect the ability to practice beekeeping? So what led me to this is, at my school in Oxford, we have 4 beehives, and I hadn't thought much of apiary outside of the 5-mile radius around my school before this course, but this course made me begin to recontextualize my interests to align them with the Arab world. And from this, I decided to focus my research on Palestine, as it's an area of academic interest to me. So there are apiary communities all over Palestine. There are roughly 86,000 beehives, and this means that there are approximately 4.3 billion honeybees. So it's a prominent practice. So this dates back to, in the general Arab world, back to ancient Egypt, Greek and Roman agricultural documents, and Jewish sources of the Roman and Byzantine periods that date how much honey they made each year, how much money they made from it, and what they used it for. So honey was prominent and still is because it was used to replace sugar. There were other sweeteners such as figs, dates, grapes, and carobs, but honey, when available, was the preferred. So there's architectural evidence of it. For example, this jug on the left, which is an artifact that was used to store honey, and it's made of clay and mud. And then on the right, there is more proof of beehives in Gaza, because these are like archaic beehives that were made of mud, clay, and straw. They're a much cheaper method of collecting honey. So moving on to women in beekeeping, the World Bee Project pioneered in 2019 a project to establish apiaries for women on rooftops of their houses in East Jerusalem. So this created new livelihoods for the women through the sale of honey and rooftop bee tourism. So this created a vibrant community of Palestinian women beekeepers, and it's now thriving in East Jerusalem, and the program was highly successful. And it's also been supported by Jerusalem municipality, and other support has been offered from various politicians and agricultural activists. So specifically, Tahani lives near Ramallah in the West Bank. She's a mother of 5 and the sole breadwinner of her family. So she is an example of a woman in beekeeping who earns money off it. So female workforce participation in Palestine is among the lowest in the world at 18%. And in addition to this, access to financing and loans for small businesses is close to non-existent for most Palestinians in the West Bank. So this project addresses both issues, financing and unemployment. So Palestinian women working in an apiculture farm in the West Bank bring in like an income through honey. So this is a major boost, where 1 in 4 people and 40% of women are unemployed. So this has become an economic lifeline for women, although it is not necessarily stable. So moving on to the socio-economic factors. In the West Bank, beekeepers are having to get back on their feet through the Ministry of Agriculture's funding. So the beekeepers have demanded that the Palestinian government offer them incentives to market local honey, both at home and abroad. So they've called for government support to overcome Israeli obstacles that have preventing them from reaching their hives, as well as helping them face the competition from Israeli honey, which they say is inferior. So the Ministry of Agriculture pays great attention to the development of honey market in the West Bank, said the Director of Beekeeping Department at the Ministry of Agriculture. And he said, since 2014, the ministry has been distributing thousands of beehives to families wishing to start honey farms to boost this vital industry. So average annual honey production in the West Bank consequently increased. It still faces several threats though. So Hamid, who is 42, owns several beehives in the northern border of the Gaza Strip. So these beehives are his family's only source of income and livelihood. And he told a journalist with frustration What I never expected actually happened. My farm's production for this year was no more than 300 kilograms of honey, while in normal times, the amount of honey reaches 750 kilograms. So he explained that the Israeli war in Gaza has caused the destruction of 20 of his 50 beehives, costing $220 each. So Hamid said that the losses he incurred following the war totaled $4,400 US. So as a result of the recent war, the annual output of the bee sector decreased to its lowest levels yet, incurring $3 million in losses, according to the director of the Ministry of Agriculture's Animal Protection Department. So the regular attacks, which decimate the crops of local farmers, have also had a detrimental effect on the strip's bee population itself. A beekeeper has said, "I was working on the beekeeping in the northern Gaza Strip. We always keep the bees in these areas and put our hives there so that the bees collect nectar from the flowers in the wide open areas and produce honey away from the crowded city centre out of fear of the occupation's missiles." So pesticides are also a prominent issue. After the occupation sprayed chemicals in the area a few years ago, the planes destroyed over 50% of the bees in 50 hives. Said another beekeeper. He said, "I established this project many years ago. Now I'm facing heavy losses." So beekeeping faces several threats as outlined, not to mention agricultural failure due to climate change as well, though this issue isn't unique to Palestine. So in conclusion, beekeeping faces several challenges in Palestine, such as agricultural volatility, pesticide attacks, economic instability, and climate change, and they all pose as major obstacles. But despite this, beekeepers across Palestine are persevering to sustain the apiaries and collect income, and it's been practiced for many years, so it's probably not going to go anywhere. These are my sources, and thank you very much for listening.